In today's podcast, we have the original tweet king and the thread master, Sahil Bloom. And we talk about various frameworks that you can follow to grow on Twitter, to lead a successful life, to learn how to become a content creator and stay relevant. This is a highly actionable and insights driven podcast. You can listen to this podcast and literally apply it in your daily lives. So subscribe to the channel right now and comment which part did you think was the most value adding. You are one of those creators who is on everybody's Twitter bookmarks.
Oh, yeah.
Not feed to 100%, but you're on the bookmarks as well. Like, I remember first time I saw your content, just read the hook and I was like, save this to my bookmark.
Yeah.
Like, I'll read it later.
Yeah.
And the last few days I've been reading all of that,
Yeah.
all of them again and again and again. Before moving to the tactical part, if you can just tell us about like where you're from, where's your mom from, dad from, and all that journey.
Yeah. So I grew up in the States, in the U.S. My
You're
background,
born in the States?
I was born in the States, in New York. But my background is I'm half Indian. So my mother grew up in Bangalore, and my mother came to the U.S. for college to go and study. And came across my father. She was doing graduate school at Princeton. My father was finishing his PhD there. And they crossed over by 2 weeks. My dad is American, white, as white as they come looking guy. And they crossed over and fell in love in 2 weeks. And my father's family didn't accept it. His parents didn't want him marrying someone that looked different than them.
Yeah.
And basically told him that he had to choose between her or us.
Okay.
And so my dad walked out and chose my mother. And so the rest is a little bit of history. But I grew up in the U.S. My father's a professor at Harvard in Boston. So I grew up just outside Boston. But I got a scholarship to play in college, went to Stanford and played, got my master's there, and then took a job. And I started working when I was 22 in finance. And now I find myself here doing something very different.
Got it. And how were you introduced to the whole content scene?
It's an interesting story. I mean, I was working in finance in an investing job, and COVID hit. And like everyone, I was bored. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to do something to be growing and to be improving, and I couldn't do work those hours. I just didn't have enough work. And so I wanted to figure out what it was. I had always loved writing. Okay. Writing was something that I always got energy from. It was an escape for me. And so I started just writing more. I was spending more time, and I thought, where can I put this out? I didn't have a blog. I didn't have a newsletter. So Twitter was the place that I opened, and I started posting things. And then I just thought, well, one tweet is fine, but it's only so many words. Why can't I just post more tweets under that? This was before threads were a thing. There was no way to do it. You had to comment under each tweet to add it. So I started doing that. And pretty quickly, it caught on. I could tell people liked it. They liked that it was longer, more thoughtful. I was explaining things in simple terms, and people started sharing it. And that was when I started to think, okay, maybe there's a business that I can build around all of this so that it's not just influencer. It's not just me creating content. There's businesses that can be launched around it.
So there's this book called Deep Work. I'm sure you have heard about it, by Carl Newport. And, I love that book because one of the lines is that in today's distracted world, the superpower that we have is to focus, think, and write. And I think you have mastered that. Do you think people like us have lost the ability to sit down, think, and just absorb?
The modern world does not allow you to be bored.
Yeah.
That's how I would put it.
That's a good
The modern world forces you to constantly have things coming in. You're scrolling on social media and you're being hit by constantly just a barrage of things, video, images, everything. People want you to be doing things at all times. You need to be going from one task to the next. If you're not, you're missing out on some growth. That's the common perception. And it's absolutely incorrect. How you actually reclaim this and reclaim your growth is to embrace boredom, to embrace those moments where you're just able to think and you're just able to sit and be quiet and just think about the ideas and the things you've consumed. Because if you think about the way we learn and the way we grow, we take in ideas. That's from reading, that's from listening, that's from talking to people, etc.
100%.
But you need a time when those ideas can wrestle in your mind, can come together, can exercise almost. Okay. And that only happens when you're able to just sit or you're able to just walk and you don't have a podcast on and you don't have music, you're just walking, you're just sitting, that's when the ideas start to mingle with each other and come together to form an insight. And the insight is what allows you to take off in your life. The insight, it's not the idea, it's the insight that you've developed from it. And so in order to do that, we need to find periods of time when we're just quiet, when we're just bored, when we're not focusing on doing something, because that's when the magic actually happens.
For you, when did this happen? Was it a new thing, or you've always been like this? Because I'm sure the finance job must be on and on and on and on and on.
No, a very new thing. In my finance job, I was just working. It was just intensity at all times, head down. I was stressed. I was a little overweight. I wasn't fit. Once I started to find a little bit more balance in my life, where I had time, where I could think about what are those 10x opportunities for me? Because the way your career and your life goes, how old are you?
23.
Okay, so you're still so young. So you're just entering this phase. Early in your life, your job is to explore. You have to go, to use a video game analogy, there are those video games where you start out on a map. The map is all black everywhere around you, and you have the tiny little spot of light where you're standing. Your job is to go explore that map and go put light on the entire map so that you can see everything that exists there. Then you can figure out where the best place is to build your civilization, to build your life. But only once you've actually unlocked the entire map. If you try to build when all you know is that tiny speck on the whole map, how are you going to know that that's the best place to build? You might be building right next to a disaster. You might be in the worst spot on the entire map. So early in your career, you have to explore. That comes from saying yes to a whole lot of opportunities. That comes from working really hard and going after all of the different ones, because you have to stumble, you have to make the mistakes and do those things. After you've done that, your job is to exploit the best opportunities that exist, to look at the whole map and say, what are the 2 or 3 opportunities that are going to be 100x opportunities for me? And I'm going to go all out on those.
Makes sense. Yeah.
You have to do it in that order, though. If you don't, it's a really, really dangerous game to play. So for me personally, those early years of my career were exploring. I was spending time, really working hard, making connections, building a network, doing all of these things. And then after that, COVID hit, and that prompted me to start thinking about exploiting. What are the things that are really high leverage for me? Walking has been a huge addition to my life that I never would have added, because I realized how high leverage that was for me.
Exactly. If somebody's stuck in this scenario, one like you're, for example, I run an agency business. I'm just stuck in that. I'm just doing one thing after the other. I'm talking to my team, clients, brands, creators. How do you get out of this lot and then focus on because I think it's a luxury to have time to be bored.
Well, first off, I think anyone can find 15 minutes a day. Anyone that says they don't have 15 minutes is just lying.
It's not prioritizing them.
Yeah, it's just a lot. It's like most issues of time are not time issues. They're priority issues. You're just not prioritizing it if you can't find 15 minutes. And that's fine, but you need to be honest with yourself that you are just not prioritizing it. So that's the first thing I would say. The next thing is, there's nothing inherently wrong about doing that scenario A, about working really, really hard, working these long hours, for you working on the agency. Early in your career, I think it's a great thing, because you are exposing yourself to so much learning when you work that way. I would never trade the 90, 100-hour work weeks that I worked. I wouldn't give those up, because I learned so much. I met so many people. I built relationships. All of that has led to where I am today. What I would say is that after a few years of doing that, you should start thinking actively about what are the opportunities where I can separate my inputs from my outputs. Right now, you're just talking about a one-to-one trade. I'm creating one unit of input is creating 1 unit of output. Yeah. And that's not what you want to do the rest of your life.
For sure.
That's fine at first. Yeah. That's okay. Most people you have to start there. That's the natural place to start. But eventually you want that 1 unit of input to create 2 units.
I love this. Yeah,
and then you want the 1 unit of input to create 3 units. And eventually you want it to be 10 or 100. And once you start thinking about that, you start looking for those things. If you're not thinking about it, you'll never find them. But only once I change my mindset of like, okay, what are the things I can do where 1 hour of my time is creating value for me forever? 2 days ago, Bill Ackman, the billionaire investor in New York, retweeted something that I had posted in November of 2021. He tweeted saying, a friend sent me this. It's really good. Everyone should read it. From November 2021, something I put out. I replied to it and said, thanks for sharing this, Bill. Would love to grab lunch in New York. I know he lives in New York. Would love to grab lunch in New York on me.
Yeah.
He immediately replied to me and said, come into the office for lunch. And so now I have lunch with a billionaire investor based on something I created 16 months ago.
Love
Now,
it.
when you think about leverage,
Yeah.
that is a pure form of leverage because something I wrote that long ago is still doing work on my behalf. I created something that is doing work for me in the world. I never would have had that opportunity if I hadn't created something 16 months ago.
True.
And so when you do that, you've started to stack these things that are out in the world, an army of things that are still working for you when I'm sleeping. I was literally asleep and he tweeted it.
Why is US the center of innovation? Like you talk about Google, the Mang, they're all in US, right? And the most amount of billionaires they're in the US. And I feel I often ask this question to myself, like why is India not there, or where are we lacking?
The US still has, I would say, the most free market capitalism in the world. It is a society that so values the entrepreneurial mindset that you see in America is so much higher than from the Indians. Indians just want to grow. They want opportunity. They want to learn. They're so ambitious, so excited. In America, you just get people saying like, "Oh, what are you trying to sell me? What's the, oh, what are you doing? What's this?" And there's a lot more negativity and cynicism. In India, I just have not found that. People are so open. They want new ideas. They want to grow. They want to learn. And that's an incredible, I mean, what better way to experience growth as a country than if you have the youth of an entire nation feeling that way.
Yeah. How is India right now against the other countries? Let's say Europe or Australia or New Zealand. Do you have any viewpoint on that? Like, how are they doing as a country? What are their 23-year-old, 24-year-old thinking right now?
Yeah. So I think that India is unique in how growth oriented its youth is
really?
right now, because I think there's an optimism about what the future looks like and about the new opportunities that are coming to India as it enters the global sphere. I mean, the COVID, frankly, in my opinion, when you zoom out 50 years from now, is going to be a turning point for India, because with everybody coming online and with the fact that opportunities are now borderless, India is so uniquely well positioned. I mean, a young person growing up in India that has access to YouTube and that has access to online courses and all of this different thing, they can go create an agency servicing US clients in US dollars and make a lot of money. Every Indian has that opportunity now because COVID has made everything borderless, man. It's crazy. The number of young people in India relative to anywhere in Europe. Unbelievable opportunities. There are huge challenges. I mean, there's still a lot of corruption. There's still a lot of issues facing India. And the lack of inclusive growth. I mean, the number of people that are still living
I agree. Yeah.
on such a low kind of base income level is scary if nothing changes.
It's like capitalism versus socialism as well in India. It's like there's the top 1 to 5% who's trying to push towards capitalism and growth and all that, and there's a 95% who's trying to pull back and be like, "Nay, let's do this, let's do that."
Yeah,
I think that's the.
I mean, I am a enormous believer in free markets and in capitalism. Having grown up in America, having seen it, and now having experienced it and lived in it, I am a huge proponent of free markets and capitalism. It's why I believe in India versus China. I don't believe in China.
Yeah,
I'm short China. I think China is going to have a lot of issues in the coming 100 years because a state-controlled economy, I don't believe will work in the long run. And I think people will rebel against that because they won't have the opportunity in a free sense that they otherwise would.
Good point.
India has an opportunity to become that global superpower.
I think Twitter is still a platform which has not been explored from an Indian perspective. When it comes to Twitter, there are hardly, I would say, 25 to 40 good pages who are dominating or who are actually utilizing Twitter. How do you suggest? What is a framework that you follow, or like 3, 4, 5 steps that you can tell the audience of how to grow on Twitter?
The couple things I would say for anyone that's starting out on Twitter. The first thing is you have to post regularly. The same as any other platform, you have to post on a consistent basis. It's the only way to grow on social media and to build your audience is to post consistently. The second thing is you have to figure out what you are uniquely qualified to talk about, way around this. The benefit is now with AI tools, you can amplify and accelerate the quality of your content.
Correct.
You don't have to have perfect English in order to write great content. So if you feel like you actually have slightly broken English or you're not perfect with your grammar, you can actually use ChatGPT or these AI tools to improve that. And that's a great advantage that people should be utilizing. So those are the 4 that I would say just right off the bat when you're getting started. And then the 5th is an X factor, and this is community. When you start out on any of these platforms, you need a community of like-minded people who are at a similar stage trying to grow. When I started out, I had a group chat with a group of 4 or 5 creators who you would all know. We were all in a text chat, and we would share the things we were writing so that each other could comment and engage with it and help support. That has enormous, enormous effects, because suddenly things that you would put out that would otherwise have 5 people see them have 100 people seeing them. And then the things you put out that have 100 people seeing them might have 1,000.
Correct.
And it accelerates the entire pace of it because you're kind of growing together. You're creating this rising tide for everyone within that group.
So you are talking about finance and growth because you have been there, done that. That's the credibility angle. Like you have done finance, you're from Stanford. That's all your credibility stamps. But I don't have a stamp of, like let's say a Stanford stamp or a finance stamp. How do you build that aspect when you're trying to, like you're in your journey, you're on your weight journey?
2 pieces to it. The first one is write about what you struggle with. Every single day, think about what did I struggle with today? Think about what you struggled with. How did I work through that struggle? How did I fix it? What were my answers? What were the questions I asked to think about that struggle? Write about that. Create content around that. Because if you struggled with it, there's a million other people that struggled with that same thing. So you don't need to be solving problems. You need to be thinking about and asking the right questions about your struggles, because that will be valuable content to someone. The second piece, credibility is manifested in the online world and in the digital world. You all of a sudden will wake up one day and be someone that someone considers credible because you've built an audience. It's a circular thing. I wasn't credible to write about X, Y, or Z until I wrote about it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And then people looked to me for it because I had an audience. And it's a funny new mindset that only young people that have grown up in the digital world understand.
Yeah.
James Clear was not credible about habits until he wrote Atomic Habits, or until he wrote a blog for 6 years that had people following him to learn about habits. Then he became the authority on habits. So credibility is manifested. It's not a university degree or a professorship or some title that you have that creates credibility in the modern age. I'm wrestling with this right now with my book publisher, because they, book publishers come from like an old world mindset and they want me to like partner with someone on a piece of something that I'm working on to have credibility enhanced around it. And I keep trying to tell them, I'm credible because I've done this over these years and I've put out all this content. That's my credibility. It's the portfolio of work that people are reading on a weekly basis. Twice a week, people are reading my newsletter. That's my credibility built up over time. I don't need a professor to be, have their name next to me in order for this to be credible, or a university. It's earned.
Listening to all your history and the finance background, the baseball background, all that, there's nothing which tells me that you're a good storyteller. But your Twitter profile does tell that. So how did that happen? Like,
I've always been a storyteller. Like I was always the person in my baseball locker rooms that would tell stories and get people laughing and exaggerate things. And I was like, I've always had that. I've gotten that from my mother, who I'd say is like the greatest storyteller I know. She's unbelievably charismatic and a storyteller and an amazing writer. So I've definitely inherited it from my mother, who I think probably got it from her mother. But I've always had that. I just never had it playing out as a writer. That was never the way that I was doing it. Honestly, like a lot of people, I didn't know that you could make money doing these things. I didn't know that there was a business that I could build. What I have been really thoughtful about, and what every creator should be thoughtful about, is thinking, what are the businesses that I can create around my creation ecosystem? Most creators only think about the money they can make from creating. So if you're a YouTuber, you're making money off the ads, that you're a creator. That's great. You're making money and you're happy doing that. But that's not going to last forever.
True.
No one creates videos for more than 10 years. There might be 3, 4, 5 people in the world that are going to do that. For the most part, you kind of have like a time when you're really relevant, and then you're not quite as relevant at some point. Very few will have 10 plus years. And if you're 25 and you're doing this, you have a long businesses that I have an unfair advantage to build. So my agency businesses are really not a one-to-one trade anymore. They are incredibly high leverage for me. And those are businesses that aren't directly tied to me creating content. I have an unfair advantage because I have this platform where I can send new customers to it. And the customers are paying a high rate in US dollars, so they make quite a bit of money. But beyond that, what businesses can I own 20, 25% of and do no work other than bringing in leads from my platform? Because now all of a sudden I've separated myself and my need to create content from income that I'm earning every single month. And now I have all of these streams of income coming in from these different things that have nothing to do with me needing to write every single week. So if I eventually get tired and I don't want to,
You have these
that's okay. I have a
machinery.
portfolio of assets that are doing work for me when I'm not doing anything while
Yeah.
I'm sleeping. I think more creators, more people need to start thinking about
I
that.
agree.
What is your unfair advantage and how can you exploit that?
Yeah, I know. To give you a context of the same thing that you mentioned in Indian perspective, in the last 2 years, lot of creators came in, right, and during COVID. And these are folks who are making $10,000 a year to now $10,000 a month. During, like right now, it's not a good time. The funding's, it's winter season and all that. So funds is not coming in. So influence marketing is little dried up. Like, it's 30% negative, 40% negative. And the creators right now are asking themselves of how sustainable this is. And this is the time they need to think of what they can build by leveraging the distribution that they existingly have.
Yeah.
And there are folks like Sharan, Financial Sharan, he's building his course.
Yep.
There's Raj who's doing a startup altogether, right? So I think this mindset also needs to be there in the creators. It's an unfair advantage to have.
Yeah, and there's levels to it. I would say courses are probably the first level where you're still pretty close to your
Exactly.
face as
Yeah.
a creator.
It's not
Businesses are probably, businesses that are like agencies are probably the next level. The level beyond that would be like investing in, startups, things that you're creating a wealth mechanism that's long term, that's not
Yeah.
tied to you creating. And then it's just businesses that aren't connected at all, like, owning a coffee shop or like owning in a business that's cash flowing for you when you're not working. My big focus is on identifying someone to run these businesses, having from day one an operator whose sole focus is
Yeah.
going to be running that thing. We
Yeah.
just created an agency business that's helping
Like-
startup founders building personal brands. And I did it with a few friends and we all seeded it and we hired a great operator to run it. So he checks in with us once a week or once every other week. We send leads to him. So he has plenty of new customers and he handles it and he's great. And what it does is like now, I own 20% of this business that I'm going to have to spend maybe 2 hours a month on. And I think,
Yeah.
a year from now, my guess is the business is generating $1 million a month.
Wow.
And so that's an incredible opportunity for me and an incredibly high leverage on my time. That's the 1000x. I mean, that's 100 to 1000x opportunity. That's just created out of thin air because you started focusing on it.
So is your goal right now, the vision right now is to build such leverages and on top of that build businesses? Is that a priority right now?
I have kind of like circles of focus. So media is one of my circles of focus. Media I broadly would define as my book, my newsletter, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of the platforms that I operate on. That's my kind of personal media holding company that generates cash. There's a business there. I reinvest a lot of it to grow, etc. Then there's like the business ecosystem. And there's a dotted line that connects these two because my platform helps drive business.
Yeah.
I want 15 businesses within that ecosystem that I spend a total of 5 hours a month on that just send me cash every single month. That's what I want out of that business ecosystem. That's how I want it to operate. And so knowing that means certain things about how I'm going to do it. I'm not going to get involved in things that are going to require my attention at all times. I'm going to partner with people that I know have unique leverage and ways to help operate on that level. And then the third piece is I run an investment fund. I have a $10 million venture investing fund where I invest in early stage technology.
companies.
That is an incredible wealth creation mechanism for the long term. It's a long-term game, and I'm going to raise one of those every 18 to 24 months, $10 million probably at a time, and I make 25% of the profits. So there's an incredible wealth creation if you're doing well investing that. So the way I generally think about it is like the media and the businesses create a lot of income. There's a lot of cash flow that comes off of those things, and the investing creates wealth for the long term. That's always been my framework around financial things is you have two types of financial activities. You have income generating opportunities, and you have wealth generating opportunities. And you need both. You want both in your life. The creating stuff is typically just income. And so all these people, you're making a bunch of money and you're all happy. And then the next month it dries up and you're like, oh my God, where did it go? It's not sustainable. So you need things that are generating income so you're paying the bills. And then anything you have that's in excess of the bills you're paying, funnel that into the things that are wealth creating. Figure out how to take that and put it into things that are compounding over the long run for you, the wealth generating activities. And if you do that, you don't have to work all that much or for that long because you've set yourself up in such a good way for the future.
right now everybody's getting on it. Everybody's Instagram reels, and as you mentioned with the AI ChatGPT, I created my today's LinkedIn post with AI, like a ChatGPT, and got like 1,500 likes, and I was like,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen? What do you think is the future of content creation in the next 2, 3, 4 years? It's getting easier and easier, right?
Yeah, I think it's getting easier and easier to create the commoditized content, the baseline level. And so I think what happens when that happens is you have to figure out your way to stand out and how it's going to be different. And for me, that's with personality. So I think about the exact same thing, frankly, as with ChatGPT, happened with Twitter threads. I was the first one to sort of do it. People saw how fast I grew and how it worked. People kind of figured out what I was doing. They dissected it. They all started doing it. Suddenly, threads were everywhere, and they are everywhere. And they're really bad for the most part, right? Like, it's mostly people that are just creating the same thing over and over again. They're not unique. They're not interesting. They don't have their perspective. And so what I've tried to do is, okay, there's going to be a lot of people doing that. How am I going to be different? Well, I'm going to start sharing more of me, of who I am, of my personality. You see me sharing more pictures of my family, with my son, my life, my own struggles, my parents, etc. Because what I want to do is create a connection. I want to create a real community and a real connection with a person so that when that person is reading my content, they feel like they know like that. There are going to be some people who just want the robotic frameworks. They don't want the family content. They don't want the pictures of my son. They don't want the pictures of me and my wife. And that's fine. That person shouldn't follow me. I want the people that really want me for who I am in my entirety. And I think if you do that, you always stand out. If all you're doing is just producing content that I can just look up on Google, that's going to get erased because the market is going to make it so easy to produce that you just can't stand out doing it anymore. The other piece is vanity metrics should be forgotten. It's going to be harder to grow to the like 10 million phase when everyone can do this. And so what is more valuable is focusing on the 10,000 that love you and that will buy anything you do. That's more valuable than 10 million that don't care, that could go to anyone for the thing you're giving them. I know so many people that have way bigger audiences than me that can't get someone to buy a single t-shirt from them because the audience doesn't care. They don't have a connection to you. They don't really care about what you're saying. I would much rather have 10,000 people that will buy every book I release, that will buy every single course you do, that will buy every single thing you put out. That's so much more valuable for your business long term. So that is my general perspective on where this is all going. And again, I think every creator should be thinking about what are the businesses that are slightly dislocated from me creating on a daily basis.
What do you mean by this?
Slightly separated from your actual creation. It's not you making new videos every day.
Not dependent upon
It's not necessarily dependent. It allows you to leverage your unique unfair advantage, but it's not connected to it. Like a YouTuber that rather than having to make new videos every day, they're able to take their platform and talk about some company very quickly and send a whole ton of new business to it. And they own a chunk of that business. Now that business is running and generating cash, but it's not tied to them making a new video every single day about it. That's what you need to be thinking about because the durability of these things, who knows?
It's very easy to create LinkedIn posts. So how can a creator embrace it?
That's very quick. And now I'm back to writing. I can like get the thing, I see it, I'm able to kind of write and craft my voice around it. So that's an incredible tool that you can leverage if you're doing it well. Yeah, it sharpens your knife. Like all of the tools in your arsenal are getting sharper for using them. So you can figure out the ways that it fits into your universe that allows you to do better work, that allows you to accelerate, and then layer your personality on top of it. Because again, I think in a world where everything becomes robotic, humans are going to and be on the other end of the spectrum.
And is it even possible to be relevant in today's world without creating content?
Yes. The way to do it is to create results. So either, I think if you want to be, well-known and you want to be not famous, but if you want to be well-respected, well-known, the two big ways to do it are to create content today, as you talked about, put things out there and build an audience, or create results. And that's, you just had your head down, you started a business, built something amazing, and made a bunch of money doing it. And when you think about those two, most things fall into one of those two buckets. People that we think about that we admire, they either created results or they create content.
And then the media follows them and they're creators.
Yeah, exactly. If you want that, if that's your goal in life is to go, to be well respected, to be well known, it's one of those two paths. And that's not for everybody. Some people want to just, live a quiet, quiet life and just do well and make their money. And working the one-to-one life, that's fine. If you want that, if you want to work 9 to 5, go home, spend time with your family, that makes you happy and feel fulfilled, that's fantastic too. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You just need to decide what text. There's nothing. That's writing. And that's sitting with whatever ideas I've been focused on, whatever I've planned the night before I'm going to be writing about, and I sit down and just get into the zone. I listen to an app called Brainwaves that has kind of like a wave sounds. Huberman Lab talked about it. I think it's free, or maybe it's $2.99. And it gets me immediately kind of into that focused and zone state, and I just sit and write. That's for 3 hours usually. I'll take a break if I need to in there, but normally first thing in the morning is my peak creative state, and so I try to really take advantage of it. This is one thing that's really important for everyone to understand. Everyone has different creative energies during the day. I'm a morning person. I have my peak creative state from 5:30 to 8:30. I might be useless after about 8:30, but I know if I get that 3 hours in and it's incredible, I could be done for the day and not feel bad about that. I might have written 2 newsletters during that 3 hours. I might have written a chunk of my book. I could be done for the day, and that's okay. And so I've won the day already. But if your peak creative flow state is at 11 at night, that's okay. Don't try to force yourself to be a morning person and go to bed early and wake up then. Figure out when your circadian rhythm, when your peak creative energy is, and build your routine around that. There's this whole tendency for like online gurus to say you have to wake up early, or you have to go to bed at 9 and wake up at 4 if you want to be successful. It's bullshit. The whole thing is figuring out what works for you. When is your creative energy at its highest? And then build your day around that. Build your day to optimize for that. That's what I've done. So I kind of, I have that time. I'm done by 8:30. I go downstairs. I take my son for a walk, usually an hour and a half. That's when I'm kind of thinking about things. How did my work just go? He's asleep, so I'm sort of out just walking with my ideas. Okay. Then I work out from about 10:30 to 11:30 or noon, eat lunch, and then I have another 3-hour bout where I try to focus and spend time on things. And that's normally more business stuff. That's
calls and all that.
I don't do calls anymore. I've stopped doing phone calls. This is a good one. Business stuff, investing, things that I need to take care of, and some content work now and then, videos, things that I need to do. And then in the evening, I try to be free. I take my son for another walk, and we have dinner as a family. And if I have to do things after dinner, I'll do, some cleanup. I'll normally spend a little bit of time on email, 30 minutes, and then go to bed, wind down.
But where are the calls?
So I don't do calls. I have this thing I call the energy calendar, which is what you do is you start a week on a Monday. Yeah. At the end of every day, look at your calendar and change the color of the things on your calendar based on whether it created energy, was neutral, or drained your energy. So look at everything that was from that day and say, did this create energy for me? Mark it green. Did it drain energy? Mark it red. Was it neutral? Mark it yellow. At the end of a week, you can look at your calendar and have a pretty good sense of what type of activities are draining your energy versus creating energy. Now, the goal is to figure out how you can spend the most time in your green activities and the least time in your red. And for me, calls were always red. And what I realized was most of the calls I was doing were 0 point. There was no action item. There was no next step. There was no value that was created. Meetings in person, I really enjoy. I love sitting down with people face to face. And so what I did was I decided, okay, I'm going to take only 1 day a week when I do calls. I still have to do some calls. So I'm going to take 1 day a week, and that day is going to be my call day. There's going to be a block of time when I'm going to do calls, but it's going to be confined to this one window. Every other call, I'm going to offer, hey, we can meet in person. I'll be in the city on this date. Let's see if you're here. New York City is one of those places where most people come. So even if they don't live there, eventually they come and we meet. And I'm happy to meet people in person. But calls were killing me. And they were ruining my day because you'd have, if you have a block of 3 hours and then there's a call sitting in the middle of it, you can't get into a flow state during that window. The whole window is shot because of the one call. And so I eliminated that. Now I don't have that at all. I just have a block of time on Thursday when I do phone calls. Every other day I can find these blocks for deep work. But I just realized most calls
point.
could have been an email. Most
Or a
calls
voice
could have
note.
been a voice note. Most calls could have been async. There wasn't some incredible insight or value. So like all the, hey, we'd love to get to know you, get on a call, just going to skip that. Just do it in person. Come meet me. Like I'm more than happy to. I think it's like a double benefit in that it frees up your calendar and it makes the relationships better. It makes you connect better.
Makes sense, makes sense. And going back to the early morning 5:30 to 8:30 time, which is the deep work time, don't you get bored? Like 3 hours, I'm sure you can't write consistently. So there must be periods of 10 minutes, 15 minutes where you're just like sitting and not doing anything.
Yeah.
Don't you feel like opening your phone at that time suddenly for like 5 minutes?
I don't have my phone with me. This has been a big insight. I have a lockbox now that I've gotten
Lockbox.
that I put it in.
Wow.
That actually is like it locks until a certain time. Or I leave it in the bedroom, leave it in the other room, and I come up to my desk and anything I need to play is on my computer. I have a new device for writing that is not connected to the internet. It's a Wi-Fi, like it looks like a typewriter.
Okay.
And it allows me to write without the distractions of internet things. And then I use this app called Flow, which blocks all those apps on my computer. But I also don't fight boredom. Like if I start to feel like my mind is wandering, I'll just like go for a little walk, or I'll go downstairs or do some push-ups. Yeah, I'll just move around. Like I don't try to force myself to be some productive robot. I'm not like a productivity guru. I'm not the most productive person in the world. I get distracted pretty easily. Like Ali Abdaal is like my productivity guru. He's a friend. I think he's amazing.
I've seen that
But when he
podcast.
shows like, you know, some of the sheets, journals, things he does, I start getting stressed just even seeing that, because I can't like I'm just a pretty simple guy about these things. Start thinking in the back of your head, oh, what's the point? I didn't get it done today, so why would I do better tomorrow? If I'm the type of person that sucks at things, I can't get stuff done. You start like creating this mental image of yourself that is very negative, and that's just detrimental to everything you do. If you flip it and you say, I actually did do this, maybe I didn't accomplish the full thing, but I did get this done. You kind of change it to like the done list. Like you got
Something
these
like
things
progressive
done.
overload.
Flip it around. Now, okay, I made a little bit of progress. I should be proud of myself for that. I did a little bit. I made a little bit of a chunk, a little bit of effort. I put in the effort. Now I'm stacking wins. I'm stacking these like little positive contributions into my bank of who I want to be. And if you keep doing that day in, day out, good things happen. Compounding works. Anything above zero compounding is compounding.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't need to be some Herculean effort. I think we hype ourselves up that we need to do so much more. And there's that famous quote, most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year.
True.
It's very true.
Yeah.
I constantly overestimate what I can do in a day. I'll have 5 things on my list of what I'm going to write. I get through 1.
You were in the negative self-talk, and then slowly you tried going positive.
Have that interaction with yourself and to come to that determination that it's not healthy for you, that it's not productive for you, it's not making you better, but it's also just leading to unhappiness. It's leading to a lot of comparisons. Most of the unhappiness in my life has come from comparing myself to others. Okay. And I've only realized that recently. When I feel unhappy on any given day, it's normally because I saw someone else achieving something that I want to achieve.
That's so true.
And I said, oh man, why are they crushing it like that and I'm not? And it makes me feel bad. And that's silly, because the only comparison worth making is to yourself from yesterday. Easy to say, hard to do. And so what I've tried to do now is create this mindset, this flip, where every time I feel any sort of jealousy or envy, I flip that to curiosity, to that person's crushing it. What are they doing that is so good? Let me learn from them. Not let me feel jealous for many, many years that I didn't get that because I thought I wanted that so bad.
Yeah.
Or my friend raised, people I knew would raise all this money for their companies. I would say like, I'd see them post about it on LinkedIn or the new job they got or getting into business school. And I would be like, oh, why didn't I do that? And I would feel bad. I'd want to feel happy for them. I really would. But really, I would feel bad and it would make me unhappy. So changing that, flipping jealousy, envy into curiosity is the answer.
I think that's a mindset gap as well, which people have not yet covered. They feel entitled sometimes. Yeah, I should get that without working hard for that necessarily.
Yeah, there's a tendency when you see someone that has achieved what you want to achieve and you don't want to put in the work to say that person got lucky.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You look at them and you
Tell me
say,
about that.
you look at that person and they did what you want to do and you're like, they just got lucky, or they did some hack, discount it. You like create this discount in your mind where you look at them and say, no, that they
disparage them.
Yeah, you disparage them in your mind. You don't say it out loud maybe, but in your mind you try to figure out how you're going to discount them. The reality in almost all of the cases where I do that is that I'm actually just not willing to put in the work to do what they did. I'm not willing to acknowledge the fact that that person actually worked 10 years before they became an overnight success. And I'm not willing to admit that. I'm not willing to admit that they just kind of beat me. They did it longer. They were willing to let it work. They were willing to compound. Sometimes they might have really gotten lucky, but for the most part, people that achieve great things have...
Different concept that you had, the darkest dark concept. Like, but why just one? There should be 2, 3, 4, 5 more people. So how do you personally, what's your thought on this, and how do you build those relationships?
In order to build amazing relationships, I would say there's only one prerequisite, and that is that you give with no expectation of receiving in return. When someone gives because they expect something in return, that's quid pro quo. That's me saying, hey, I'm going to do this for you, and then you're going to do this for me. And whether it's explicit or not, we know that's the case in a lot of relationships. Hey, I'm going to post this. You're going to post this for me. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But you just know that that person is not really a close relationship, if that's the case. And sometimes it takes time and it's uncomfortable. You have to be patient because sometimes you're just giving and you're like, oh my God, I'm giving to all these people out there and no one is helping me. No one is looking to give things back. And then all of a sudden, someone does something for you that you never expected they would. Someone achieves some success and they remember that you helped them in this way and they come back and they give it to you 10x. And now you say, oh my goodness, this is why. This is how it all came together. And I've found that to be true time and time again.
There is nothing more common than unsuccessful people with potential. And I've thought about it like that's a fear that I have internally, that I can't, like, I have potential, I think so, and I don't want to be unsuccessful because of this code and all that. So what do you think prevents people with potential to like be unsuccessful? Is it a mindset? Is it like
discipline?
Discipline can be one. Being content way too soon.
Yeah.
But like, if you can go deeper into the discipline part as well.
Will Smith once said, talent you have naturally, skill is only built through hours and hours and hours of beating on your craft. I think about that so often. It's true. We all have talent in some area. Everyone is talented in some way. Some people make something of it and some people don't. What allows those people to make something of it? Determination, discipline, showing up every single day and doing the thing over and over and over again. In that same interview, Will Smith talks about building a wall. He says, you don't set out to go build a wall. You don't say, I'm going to go build the biggest, baddest wall that's ever been built. He says, you lay this one brick as perfectly as a brick can be laid. You do that again and again and again.
Concept which I keep thinking about is that choosing the right battle is more important than fighting a battle, right? 2 years ago, I experimented a lot. Okay, I was freelancing in like marketing, ads running and all that, performance marketing. Then I started an e-commerce company which flopped, and then I started creating content. And then because of creating content, I saw an opportunity with the brands and agency, but then I started an agency. And then the fintech boom happened, COVID happened, so everybody's on their phones, Q started coming up, and it was the right place at the right time, choosing the right battle. And in future, if there's a next pivot that I want to take, like after the agency, if I want to do something, that has to be a right battle. I don't want to be fighting probably a FMCG business. There's already so much, a red ocean business basically. So how do you think about this part, and how do you figure out that, okay, like for example, ChatGPT and AI can be the next big thing. So you can probably go and be in the right place and wait for the thing, the ocean waves to take you there. What are your thoughts about this?
I think it's the most important thing is to play games you are uniquely qualified to play and to win. Athletes are probably the best at this. An amazing tennis player that knows they have an incredible forehand plays an entire match attempting to make the other person put it to their forehand side because they know that is the game they are uniquely qualified to win. They don't try to play to their weaknesses. They figure out exactly what their strengths are, and then they set the entire board to favor that strength. And the best in the world do that over and over and over again. They exploit that edge over and over again. So playing the right game, playing the game you are uniquely qualified to win, playing the game where you have an unfair advantage, as I said earlier, is the most important thing you can do. In order to figure out what those games are, though, you have to see all the games. Your example is a perfect one. You did 10 different things in order to figure out that this was the right game that you wanted to now get into. And now you've seen 11 things. And now you know when you're going for your next thing, you have all of this information about what the map looks like. It goes to my map analogy from earlier. You now know what the whole board looks like, so you can identify that. That's why I think explore and then exploit is such a good frame of reference and such a good framework for this, because you have to explore. You have to do all the different things. You have to stumble, fall until you've seen the map, and now you can exploit the game that you know you're going to win, the game where you have a 99% chance of winning rather than a 50% chance of winning. Yeah. The other piece of all of this, I call it climbing the right mountain. You want to make sure that if you win that game, that it's a game worth winning.
Yeah.
Naval says, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You don't want to play a stupid game where you win it and realize you got a stupid prize. Someone gives you a little stuffed animal and you're like, oh, great. I spent all this time doing it for this stupid stuffed animal. I didn't want that. Is the game you're playing one where if you win, you're getting a prize that you actually want? For me personally, I was climbing that mountain. I was playing the game of finance. I was investing. I was making more and more money every year. Things were good. I looked forward 20 years and thought, okay, if I win this game, become a partner, a founder of one of these investment firms, is that a prize that I want? That prize, you make a ton of money, everything's good, but you're stressed, you're traveling all the time, you're not with your family. Is that the prize I want to win? For me, the answer was no. For some people, maybe. For me, the answer was no. And so I want to get off that track. I don't want to be playing that game anymore. Because if the prize at the end is not a prize I want, why am I playing it?
True.
So it's both pieces. It's figuring out the right game to play and then making sure that that game has a prize that you actually want.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a tennis analogy to this as well. Like, the highest paid lawn tennis player earns 100x more than a squash or a badminton player. Mm-hmm. So even though a lot of the skills are overlapping, right? Like, there's a lot of arm work, a lot of course, stamina and all that. But just because somebody's playing a lawn tennis game and not a squash or a table tennis game, they're making so much more money. Cricket versus football is another example. Like, cricketers in India make so much more money than any other sport, kabaddi, hockey, etc. Footballers are like, there have been discussions of how much they're overpaid, but it's just leverage because there's so many people watching the same game, right? I think that is what you mean by the second aspect of it.
Yeah. It has to be a prize that you want. And some people don't want just money as the prize. Early in your life, you think money is the only prize.
Yeah.
Biggest mistake I made in my career. I thought that was the only prize. That's why I'm writing this book.
Yeah.
Money is one prize, and it's an important prize. It's important for living
Freedom
happily and freedom and being able to enjoy. But most people, the treadmill they get on is that they say, okay, I'm going to make this much money so that I can do all these other things. And I'll be happy once I make this much money. But it's not true. They make that much money, and then they look and they say, oh, I actually want to make this much. I want to make more. And then I'll hang out. Then I'll relax.
Yeah.
You need to live right now. You need to figure out how you can live right now. And so should you make money? Absolutely. But you need to think about how you're going to use that money to do all these other things in your life, to live in this comprehensive way, to have happiness in all these different ways. Because chasing money is an unfulfilling beast of a path.
I want to understand this, like, what are the, I don't know, next 5, 6 things which really impact a person's personality?
I think curiosity is my number one.
Okay.
And that applies to everything. You talk about traveling. Curiosity applies to that. You're going and you're curious about other cultures, so you're going and talking to people. Curiosity for me is all about being interested rather than interesting. Okay. Everyone focuses on being interesting. When you're young, you're coming up in your career, you're like, I want to do all these amazing things so that I can be interesting, so that people want to talk to me, that people want my autograph, that they want to meet me and want me to mentor them. The reality is that you become interesting by being interested. Yeah. You have to be interested. You have to go learn things. You have to ask questions. You have to question everything. You have to talk to random people that you don't think have anything to offer you. I mean, I've learned more from an Uber driver than I have from the Fortune 500 CEO I was on the way to meet. It's just the reality. Everyone has something to offer you if you open up to it. So that'd be the first thing I would say, would just be endlessly curious. I don't know a single rich person who I don't consider curious. I think they've all been extremely intellectually curious in their life. And the reason it's you make money by identifying opportunities. And that comes from being curious. You're asking questions about different things and you're identifying, and then they have a bias for action to go and act upon them.
But in terms of activities, like let's say adventure sports and other things,
Yeah.
skydiving, scuba diving.
I think going to the gym, being fit, exercising is probably the most positive thing you can do for your entire life. When you start moving and going to the gym, you start eating healthier because you don't want to give up that effort that you just put in at the gym. You tend to, after that, want to have a healthy meal. When you work out at the gym, you sleep better at night, which is proven by science. When you sleep better, you focus better the next day. And when you focus better, you do better work.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there's this massive self-fulfilling prophecy, a flywheel that you've created in your life by doing the small action of going for the 30 minutes at the gym. It doesn't have to be 2 hours, hour and a half, 30 minutes, 15 minutes. Just go do one thing. It will change your life.
Yeah.
Reading for 30 minutes a day is another one. And read anything. Everyone always says this, like read what you love until you love to read. I think it's really fair.
Find that one book.
I read sci-fi every night before bed. There's no value of reading sci-fi. I don't like have some business insight from reading sci-fi, but I love it. And it makes me think about things in new ways. And then I talk to people about things and we share ideas. And that is a really powerful thing. Reading is where your ideas start. You start to consume ideas that are then mingling in your brain for you to have insights. So I would say reading, I think writing a little bit, even if you hate writing, but just spend 5 minutes doing journaling. It allows you to reflect on who you are as a person. And when you do that, you start making improvements towards who you are.
Correct.
When you improve who you are, now you're able to have better relationships. I don't believe anyone can have a healthy relationship with a potential romantic partner until they love themselves. And journaling is a path to beginning to love yourself in a greater way. You start to learn more about who you are, why you're thinking the things you're thinking. And that goes a long way towards being able to start loving yourself in a deeper way, which allows you to love someone else.
What are your thoughts on all the summary books and audiobooks out there? Like,
it depends what purpose you're using them for. I don't think you can replace reading a book.
That's my question.
Reading a book.
Yeah.
I can read the summary of, I can go to, I see your books up here. Like I can go get deep work on some summary, Blinkist or short form or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I didn't read it. I wasn't like in it thinking about it. I just got the takeaways, the summary, the output, the Twitter thread version of what it is.
Yeah.
And there's a difference. Like the act of reading, the act of forcing yourself to focus, sit down, quiet place, cup of coffee, that whole action is what builds the type of person that you're trying to become. It's not the actual just information that went into your brain. It's the entire thing that comes together. So I am a big believer in continuing to do these old-fashioned things the old-fashioned way. And I think there might be a place for these summaries. If you're doing some research and you need the quick insight to move on to do something else, sure, great. But that's not reading.
Don't replace it with the
don't replace it. That's not reading. I love audiobooks. Like when I'm driving in cars or walking on the treadmill or doing something, I love audiobooks. I think it's a great way to consume information. Again, it's not the same as sitting down and reading.
I want 3 insights from you which have given you highest ROI.
The first one would be rereading your favorite books. Rereading.
Interesting.
There's this tendency to try to stack the number of books that you read.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm going to read 50 books this year. And so you just cram through as many books as you can, as fast as you possibly can.
True.
I've gotten 10x the value from rereading my favorite books as I have from trying to read. I've read 100 books in a year. I don't remember a single thing I read that year. Reread the things that have impacted you the most.
Okay.
Because you change. The book doesn't, but you change. And so you experience it differently and you draw new insights from it. That's a huge, huge one.
That's a good point. Yeah.
The second one is a relationship one. Tell people how you feel about them when you think something positively.
Yeah.
Enormous relationship hack. When you just do that, when someone gets a text that just says something nice about them, think about the connection that you're all of a sudden creating with that person. It's amazing. And relationships are what is going to allow you to 10x your life. People. The people around you, prioritizing people. And this is a way to make sure that those people know how you feel about them along the way. My third one is to reduce the amount of news that you consume.
Okay.
Radically reduce. I stopped watching all news. I don't know what's going on.
So where do you consume then?
I don't consume news. I consume things that I believe are evergreen. I consume only things that I think are really going to matter a month from now. 99% of news will not matter by tomorrow.
That's a good point.
99% of news will not matter by tomorrow. So use that as a razor. Think about it when you see something, or when someone tries to talk to you about some new thing, whatever the new thing is. Think about, is this going to matter in a month? If the answer is no, just cut it out of your life. It's just taking space in your brain. Your brain has limited space. That's either going to go in there and stick, or something interesting that might help you 10x is going to go in there and stick. So you have to decide which one you want it to be.
Good one, yeah.
So reduce the news that you're consuming dramatically. Figure out maybe the one news source that you can count on to deliver things that are going to be important in the long run.
Yeah.
And read it once a week rather than every single day being hit with it.
And you mentioned the first point, reading the book. What is the 1 or 2 books that you can mention?
I love The Alchemist, which is a really unique one because it's fiction. People don't understand, but it's all about manifesting outcomes. Yeah. And it's about believing.
Yeah.
And then the other one is a kind of unique one, and it's called Barbarian Days, A Surfing Life. And it's off the beaten path, but probably one of the most amazing audiobooks one can ever consume. I would recommend listening to this, actually, rather than reading it, because the reader is so incredible that reads it. And it's all just about riding the waves of life and figuring out how to ride a wave and enjoy that wave, knowing that it's going to come to an end. Yeah. Because you know that there are going to be other waves in the future. All
right. Thank you so much, Sahil, for doing this podcast. I think people who see this gain a lot of value out of it. Check the link in description. Follow him on Twitter. Subscribe to his newsletter.
Really appreciate you having me. This was awesome.
We just have something to give.
Oh, jeez. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Bring this back. My wife will be really excited.